admit everybody.
Okay, great.
It's on.
Oh.
Hi, everybody. We've got 18 people in our meeting so far. Should we give it a few minutes, Anne, and maybe wait till 7:05 and just see if anybody else joins us?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
There, Anne, did you want to get going?
Yeah, let's get started, Mike.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Introducing myself, Mike Russett. I work at the City of Ottawa, the Parks and Recreation Planning Department. The meeting tonight is to introduce and to facilitate, I guess, the proposed preliminary design for the Centennial Park, what I call Phase 2, skate park and pump track facility, and the donation and gateway feature that Ann Robinson and her group, the Manotick Culture Parks and Recreation Association, has championed for a number of years now. Also joining us is Sarah Marsh from FO10, landscape consultant, who is the primary consultant on the project. Doug Fountain, also from FO10, who has been involved in the project for a number of years as well. And our design specialist for the skate park and pump track facility is Bill Gurney from New Line. So again, thank you all for joining us, and I will hand it over to Ann for a brief update in terms of introductions, site location, and background context.
Okay, maybe we can do the next slide. Great. I'm just going to briefly run through the agenda so people have a sense of what to expect over the next few minutes, and then give some background and context. Then Doug's going to jump in and talk about the 2019 concept plan, followed by Sarah, who's going to give you a sense of the David Arnfeld Recreation Area, the overall plan. Then Bill is going to key in and talk about the skate park itself and the all-wheels facility, the pump track. We're going to hold questions until the end, and then we're finally going to talk a little bit about how you can give us feedback. The meeting is being recorded, just so that you know, in case you get tired or hungry and you need to bail. We're going to post it on the MCPRA website, and you can view it there after the meeting. We've muted everyone except for the speakers for the first part of the meeting. But if you do have a burning question as we go through, put it in the chat and we'll try to address it as we go through. But you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, at the conclusion of the presentation. Sound good? Okay, we'll move to the next slide. For anybody who may not, I think most people probably on the meeting or in this virtual meeting know exactly where this is. So this is looking south. In the northeast corner is where we're looking of Centennial Park. And of course, Centennial is really Manotick's premier community park, really active area. It's 7 hectares or over 17 acres, has the soccer fields, the tennis, the sliding hill, Manotick Mountain, softball, and more. It's a busy, busy spot. The next one, you'll see it from the north, looking north. Whoops, yeah. Okay. So that just gives you a sense of the specific area that we're talking about here. I think we can go to the next one, Doug. Okay. I wanted to just take a moment before we dive into the designs for anyone who may not be aware of where have we come from. And actually this whole thing got started when, and I noticed, Terry Lynn, you're on the call, when Terry came to MCPRA and said, you know, I'm driving my kids all over the place because this skate park is a little dated and not appealing to the younger set. So we started down a road and started in 2019 to develop a concept plan for the full park. Even though a lot of the park is built out, we felt it was important to begin a discussion with the overall park. And We had an extensive community consultation process to develop the concept design, and Doug's going to talk about that in a couple slides coming up. But at the end of that process, the consensus on the priority project to be tackled was in fact this gateway area, which included the outdoor rink, combined with a basketball court, which didn't exist at the time, and the skateboard, skate park and the surrounding areas. And Trevor Alguire, I don't know if Trevor's on the call or not, but Trevor will tell you that this skate park area started 34 years ago when he actually put a wooden structure on what was then the old tennis courts when they relocated to the south end of the arena. So there was agreement that this would be the priority project. And we began then too in 2019 to put a funding strategy together. And I just want to take a moment because this has evolved over the last couple of years. But this project, which is really a $1.2 million project, would not be feasible if we didn't have funding from multiple sources. It's really the collective effort that has made this possible. We have federal, provincial, and municipal funding. The Tomlinson Foundation stepped in and helped with, especially with the first phase and the basketball courts. We had significant private donations in memory of David Arnfelt. We had community fundraising through Chick Time, Kiwanis, and other efforts. But it really is everybody pulling in the same direction that has made this feasible. Next slide. So we got going, and in 2020, the basketball design was completed. The demolition got started. You can see that in the slide by Tomlinson's machinery there. And we had the commemorative naming approved by City Council in 2020. So that it would be named, the area would be named the David Arnfelt Recreation Area in memory of Dave, who was a longtime resident and active volunteer in the community. And in 2021, we took some more steps, and last summer, we got the new basketball outdoor rink surface put in place, we got the lighting put in place, and we got additional trees planted before it got too cold to finish off the last couple of items. But kids were actually playing toward the end of the fall. And in April of 2021, we got word that the application we put in 2019 to the Infrastructure Canada funding that we had gotten it. And I have to say, I breathed a sigh of relief that day because that made everything possible or more possible. And then in 2022, we moved to contract Foten and Newline to do the actual design work for phase 2, as Mike said at the beginning. We got the consultation underway, did some further consultation on the actual skate park area. And we are hoping that construction will start this summer. So we're on a rather aggressive schedule right now, but excited to be down this road. So I'll pass it on to Doug.
Thanks, Anne. I recognize a lot of people on the call already, and I think that's just a testament to the fact that MCPRA and the City of Ottawa have been really interested in engaging with the public, and we're pleased to have been involved, for so many years leading up to now. When we what's on the screen right now is just an image of the before and after of phase 1. So I just wanted to present this to show, more or less congratulate MCPRA for all the efforts that they've done so far. They don't seem to want to slow down, which is fantastic. We've really enjoyed working with Ann and all the volunteers on the committee. And through the master plan process, we were all on the same page in this. We realized that what we were producing as part of this exercise was intended to be a flexible document, but it really helped to set the stage for opening up those other funding opportunities that might become available, because they often come up quite quickly, like the Infrastructure Ontario one, and you need to be able to respond quickly. So showing that we've done our homework, we've talked to the community, we've engaged with all the stakeholders is really helpful in that regard, and that's why MCPRA and City of Ottawa have been successful in a relatively short period of time in implementing these projects, and that's why we are where we are today. Just to ground you to the site, we're looking at this northeast corner here. This was, like I said, a draft concept meant to guide further, more detailed design and consultations. And through those efforts, we found that, phase one was actually in a very good location for a lot of reasons. The community was used to the rink being in that location. There was servicing in place already. The topography worked, circulation worked, and so it was kind of a natural fit to keep it in the same place. When we started getting into the details of the skate plaza, we sort of targeted some members of the community that are much more experienced in this realm than FOTEN. You're going to be impressed by what Bill has to say later on, but it was, for myself and Sarah and everybody else involved, it was a real useful exercise to go through. We learned a lot. It certainly didn't make us experts, but I wanted to just highlight the fact that we've been talking over the years. Actually, we've had several meetings and formal and casual discussions with the skate park people. We've done at least 5. And these are some of the sketches that sort of came, like, we didn't produce these sketches. These came out of those sessions. These are all done by members of your community who have a real vested interest and experience and expertise in skateboarding. And what came out of it, and what you'll see in Bill's design a little bit later in the presentation, was really informed by all the input that we've collected over the years through these sessions. I will now turn it over to Sarah, who's going to give you an overview of the concept that we're proposing for this new facility.
Thanks, Doug. So what you are looking at right here is the overall concept plan for the David Arnfeld recreation area. And I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of the proposed facilities and how they fit within this area of the park and connect, to the existing building and the street. And then following this part of the presentation, Bill is going to get into the details of the all wheels facility, so the skate park and the pump track specifically. So as Doug said, this builds on the work that we did in 2019 for the master plan for Centennial Park. And it does look a little bit different. We have, moved ahead with having a pump track, but the arrangement of these features on the site is very similar to what we had done before. When thinking about how to lay this out and what we needed to include in this area of the site, we're thinking about the user needs, the neighbors, the views into and out of the site, the arrangement of these facilities to each other and to the rest of the park, and how you might move between these facilities. We're trying to create a cohesive and visually appealing area. Um, and we were concerned with tree conservation. As you could see from some of those earlier photos, there are some amazing large trees in this area of the park, and we were trying to accommodate and work around them in our design. So on this plan, it's oriented a little different than you might be used to seeing the park, but north is to the left of your page. Um, so you can see in the top right is the entrance into the park, to the parking area. We've got our existing parking that is currently aligned along that asphalt path and the existing skate park. We are showing the driveway that sort of wraps around to the west of the building. We have the newly constructed existing basketball court and rink. We have all the existing trees you can see there on the site. And then we get into the new proposed facilities. So we have the skate park in the top right, and it's shown lighter because it will be constructed in concrete. We have a plaza just to the south of it that we are currently proposing to show in unit pavers, and it would tie in or be similar material to the unit pavers that are at the entrance to the community center. We have the pump track just to the left of the skate park, and paths that provide access to it. In and around the skate park, because we need to think about the edges, we're looking at no mow lawn and naturalized planting in around the pump track and between the skate park and the pump track. And it would probably be slightly more formal ornamental planting at the entrance to the parking area and along the parking edge there. We've just also included the existing post and rail fence and the community garden on the north corner of the site. And some other key features. So one of the things that we are looking at for this project is some kind of a gateway feature to recognize David Arnfeld and the recreation area. And we were trying to integrate it with the proposed facilities, and we saw an opportunity to build a sign on the proposed skate park walls. So actually, Doug, if you could just go back to that previous slide just quickly and point to the location. Yeah. So we have it labeled there. That area of the skate park is going to be raised about 3 feet, and we would propose to have a railing and sign on top of that wall. And then also on the south end of the skate park, well, it's actually west, but the bottom of the skate park, the way we're looking at it, there's another opportunity there to have a wall and railing and sort of create a secondary enhancement area in this part of the park. So maybe we'll go back, Doug, to the other one, the next slide. Sorry. So and thinking about the gateway and how it should look, we did put forward some ideas to a smaller working group, and we had initially shown signage on the concrete wall, which they pointed out rightly, it's only 3 feet high. If we have snow piled there in the winter or even just a large snowfall fall, like, will this be visible? And we also need to think about impacts from salt in snow clearing. So we looked at pushing it up and adding it to the railing feature. And we want to have a sort of cohesive look, and we're thinking that it could be built into the railing, so a sign panel and a railing that are coordinated and relate to each other. And we want it to reflect kind of the energy and activities that are going to take place in this area of the park. So we were sort of thinking maybe it could be something rather than your standard railing, something kind of funky or architectural. So these are just some concept images to give you an idea of what we could do. It could be sort of neutral, or we could incorporate color. So maybe we'll go to the next slide, Doug. Um, We also received in the bottom left-hand corner of this site, of this slide, we received a photo that was sort of an inspiration photo that came from Kathy Arnfeld. And we don't want to recreate the exact same thing in Centennial Park, but we sort of thought, well, hey, having some colorful features might be really nice to add into the gateway. And I was thinking about the activities that are taking place in this area of the park, and maybe we could do something where we are creating these figures or art in the landscape, or possibly even incorporated into that sign wall. And we could have metal figures cut out, and they'd be sort of sculptural, and again potentially integrated into the sign or into the railing, and they could be painted or powder coated. And even the sign itself, the images I showed you before were Corten or aluminum and kind of neutral, but there's an example of a very similar railing in the top right corner here where they've powder coated it red. So I mean, it can be as colorful or as neutral as we sort of want it to be. But there's options here, and we'd certainly like to hear feedback from you on what you like about these ideas or dislike. Maybe the case. But we sort of think these ideas sort of capture the energy that's there at the site, and sort of have some potential. Um, so we'll go on to the next slide, Doug. And then I mentioned the possibility of tying in something similar on the west end of the skate park, or the bottom of the page that we were looking at before. We want to recognize donors to this project, and we were thinking that we could have a donor plaza or donor wall in that area of the park. It could be again incorporated into the railing, or perhaps it's smaller panels on the wall. I've just got some concept images to kind of get ideas going of what we would see here. We also envisioned a built-in seat wall that would allow for people to gather and sit and look at the basketball court. But also, if there were events held on that basketball court, there's a bit of an overflow area and some built-in seating where people could gather. So again, it's just sort of tying it all together and trying to get a similar look throughout this area of the park. I guess we'll go on to the next slide. I think we're moving into Bill's section. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Anne. Those materials look great. Good evening, everyone. Bill Gurney here from New Line Skate Park. So we've been working more recently collaboratively with the design team and the City of Ottawa and the MCPRA to basically create the design specific for, I guess you'd call it the functional terrain. And in this case, we're looking at sort of two separate and distinct facilities. Those being a site-built, cast-in-place concrete skate park, coupled with an asphalt pump track feature. So two separate and distinct features. So for the next series of slides, I'm going to present to you all sort of the latest evolution of where we've gotten to with the design of those two features specifically. The first slide you see, which is on the screen right now, is actually an earlier version of the design. This is one that we were kicking around a couple of weeks back earlier in March. And the reason this slide is here specifically, because the slide that follows is actually the more current and the more updated design. But the reason this slide is in the presentation specifically is it's illustrating a slightly, it's illustrating a variation to the asphalt pump track layout that could be considered an option. So this slide specifically is showing that asphalt pump track, which is on the left of the image here, basically as a closed loop and kind of a hourglass or a bow tie configuration. But this version of the layout for the pump track has got sort of this crossover point. it's it's convention that these asphalt pump tracks are riders ride them in a counterclockwise location. Sorry, a counterclockwise direction. And this version of the layout would abide by that convention in terms of riding it in a counterclockwise direction. But this version of the layout offers a crossover point. The latest evolution of the design does not offer that. It offers something different than the crossover point. So the reason this slide is in here specifically is to illustrate the fact that, you know, this is not our first draft of the design. This is not our final draft of the design, but we're presenting this evening specifically to get feedback on our work to date as we work collaboratively to finalize the design. So this slide specifically is just there to highlight an alternative in terms of the layout for the asphalt pump track. But with that said, Doug, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide, which is actually the latest evolution of our work, our design development to this stage. So we look at a number of things. We look at you know, budget allocation, and we look at site integration, and we look at you know, basically making the design of these functional facilities well integrated with the existing features, and that being some of it the topography or the lay of the land, the contours of the landscape out there, as well as, you know, just all the beautiful mature trees that exist on site, and, you know, making those integrate with the parking and the access and the walkways and the basketball and everything else that, you know, FOTEN has planned in terms of sort of the gateway feature and the donor recognition. So with that, I'll begin my presentation with sort of explanation of the pump track and move on to the concrete skate park. And I'll spend a few minutes doing my best to verbally present. And then following this slide, we've got a whole bunch of 3D rendered images that will very much help with the visualization of this design as well. So we'll jump to those very, very quickly. But I'll start with the pump track. So the pump track is that darker gray, almost black. Assumed material would be asphalt paving material, which would be great for all wheels. Yeah, you know, BMX, mountain bikes, scooters, skateboards, all of the above. Pump tracks are certainly becoming very, very popular recreation amenities. They are somewhat newer on the scene, but very, very popular. And I think the one common pump track that's been referenced locally is the one in Perth that a lot of families and a lot of young people, a lot of active users seem to be enjoying. So this pump track, or most pump tracks, are, you know, the convention of the design is that there are straightaways and there are banked corners. The corners, they sort of elevate on the outside, you know, radius of the curve, and creating this banked corner condition, so that when you go into and come out of the corners, they're pocketed and in a bit of a banked corner sort of profile, similar to what you would see on like a bobsled track, how those outside corners bank up and the curves rise higher on the outside of the curve. So as I mentioned before, most of these pump tracks by convention, you ride them in a counterclockwise direction. The corners in this layout, there would be sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 right-handed corners if you're riding the track counterclockwise, and then there would be the one left-handed corner, so that you're doing something different than other than turning right multiple times over and over again. So the corners are all banked and escalated through the corners. In this instance, probably, you know, elevating from zero, a relative elevation of 0 feet high, up to a relative elevation of 0.3 feet or 0.9 meters of elevation through those banked corners. And then through the straight runs, this is where we typically get our opportunity to create those roller bumps that allow you to pump the pump track and not only sustain or maintain your momentum and your velocity, but also allowing you the opportunity, if you're pumping vigorously, to actually accelerate yourself as you're moving through the track and not only just sustain your speed. So it's a great aerobic activity. It's very accessible for a lot of age groups and a lot of skill levels, but basically what you're seeing is the banked corners on all the outside corners. The straight line sections offer the opportunity for the roller bumps. Depending on the length of the straight line section, you're going to get, 1 or 2 or 3 rollers, depending on the length of the straight line run. As I mentioned previously, we are, between this slide and the previous slide, we're looking at 2 different alternatives for the pump track layout. The one that I showed you before sort of had that crossover point where they kind of touch in the middle, which that offers something, a little variety in terms of how you might approach or ride the track. But in this version specifically, what we've done is we've eliminated that crossover point and we've created this longer straight run that exists parallel, or is proposed parallel, to Dr. Leach Drive. So that is a longer straight, allowing you more opportunities of more rollers, and effectively gives us, in this track layout, an opportunity for a jump line. Multiple rollers, the middle of which would be higher than the others, and provide the opportunity for a jump line where if you wanted, you could roll through it, sort of bump to bump to bump. But if you were more advanced and carrying more speed, you could actually jump and clear the gap between bumps. And that's what's existing sort of on the longest straight run, the straight run that's parallel to Leach Drive. And that'll probably make a lot more sense and be easier to visualize when we show the 3D aspect of the renderings themselves. But that, in essence, is the pump track. It allows us to lay it out with all the beautiful mature existing trees in mind, so there's no impact there to grading the site or developing the site or building the pump track with negative or adverse impact to the trees. The other key, finally, feature of the pump track is the start deck, and the start deck is shown in the bottom left-hand corner, and it's just a bigger area of staging. It's labeled as A, also elevated. If you're just riding continuous circuits through the pump track, it still functions like a banked corner. But if you're starting or ending a loop, where we've indicated A on the plan here, it's the start deck, and it's very much a reality if you've ever visited or used one of these tracks. By the time you get 6 or 9 or 12 active users all at the same time with their bicycles, with their scooters, with their skateboards, and they're all sort of lining up, waiting a chance to take their run or take their loop. That many individuals and their bicycles, they do take up a pretty considerable amount of space. And that's why, A is created in the design as the start deck, basically the starting and ending point of any closed loop. And that, in essence, is the asphalt pump track. There'll be some 3D images that we'll get to in the next slides. But now I will maybe just explain the concrete skate park, complementing the pump track there. So 1 second, please. So complementing the asphalt pump track, we have the cast concrete skate park on the right-hand side of the image here. And it is basically designed as a park that exists sort of all at grade level or elevated above grade level. This means that there's no sort of digging into the ground. There's no creating any sort of finished surfaces or features that exist below grade. And that's simply because of the drainage opportunities that exist, or I guess more appropriately, don't exist in this particular site development, which is why we've designed it as a skate park that will function sort of at grade and elevated above grade. So with that, on this plan, you'll see that a lot of the grade tags are noted. We have this sort of relative zero elevation. Just think of that as the base level floor slab. And then just like all the pockets in the pump track are elevated approximately 3 feet above grade, likewise, the skate park basically in all four corners has got an elevated deck, which is a standing space, a staging space, and a starting space for most riders to sort of initiate a run or end a run. So maybe let's start there. I guess on the top left and on the top right of this illustration, what's labeled on the top left as K would be an elevated 3 foot high quarter pipe deck. So a quarter pipe deck would basically have that radiused profile, like a quarter pipe feature. That'll be clearly illustrated or easier to visualize when we get to the 3 dimensions. That's what's illustrated as K. And the quarter pipe profiles also typically have that 2-inch round bar steel coping, which is embedded steel coping, which 2-inch round bar, which helps the quarter pipes function when you get to the top lip of the ramp. So that's what K is illustrating. Opposite to K on the top right-hand side of the illustration is H. Also, again, sort of one of 3 main elevated start decks of the skate park, sort of one in each of the 3 corners, elevated by 3 feet. But H specifically is what we call a bank hip. So whereas K has that radius profile quarter pipe, H just is a bank ramp profile, which is basically just an inclined plane, maybe with a little toe radius at the bottom. And then H specifically has been laid out as a hip. So there's 2 different bank ramp faces that are coming together, and then at the seam it's the hip line, and you can sort of use this as a redirector in the design as a way to change your direction as you ride through the skate park or around the skate park. From there, I would kind of like to focus the presentation on sort of what happens between H and M on the right-hand side. It's sort of one of 2 functional, primary directions of travel in the skate park, if you will. So we just talked about H as being a 3 foot high bank hip drop in. If you go all the way to the south end of the design where it's, or I guess it is the west end of the design, labeled at the bottom of the illustration, labeled as M. This is another bank ramp profile. So we have H as a 3 foot high bank drop in, M as a 3 foot high bank ramp drop in. And then what happens between H and M is basically an assortment of staple flat ground features. G specifically is an 8-inch high manual pad. I specifically is a 14-inch high flat rail. And then J specifically is a flat ledge feature. J just also so happens to wrap around 2 proposed entry points, getting you from the walkway into the skate park, and then also is, framing out an opportunity for what could be another planting bed. So that's what's happening between H and M as the 2 bank ramp drop-ins, and then G, I, and J as staple flat ground skate park features. G is the manual pad, I is the flat rail, and J is the flat ledge. If we move to the other side of the skate park, sort of the left side of the skate park, the illustration, you still got drop-ins on either end. K is a quarter pipe profile drop-in. It's at the top of the design illustration, that's kind of set into the corner so that you could, again, kind of use it as a redirector as you go sort of left to right or even right to left, riding the quarter pipe that lives in the top left of the design. And then moving towards the bottom of the illustration, you have what's illustrated as K and L and M. So K is envisioned as a quarter pipe profile. L is also envisioned as a quarter pipe profile, but also creating a little mini pocket, as well as two hips in and out, as well as a little bit of an extension feature, which will become, it'll be easier to visualize once we get to the 3D renderings again. So K as a straight wall drop-in quarter pipe profile, L as a quarter pipe profile with a bit of a pocket, and then also an extension wall, which allows that, if most of these features sort of top out at about 3 feet high, the extension through L could probably let that quarter pipe elevate to about 4 feet high. And then between L and M, there's a blend, there's a corner, and the blend changes the profile from quarter pipe transition profile to bank ramp transition profile. So between K to L, you have a hip that is transition profile to transition profile, and between L and M, you have another hip feature that is, if you're going left to right, it's a transition profile to bank profile, and if you're going right to left, it's a bank profile to a transition profile. To some of you, that probably sounds like a foreign language. Even though we do our best to present it as clearly as possible. But I think if we jump over to the 3D rendered views, I think a lot of this will be a whole lot easier to visualize and interpret. 1 second, please. So here's one of our three-dimensional rendered views, showing as best as we can a lot of the site context. You can see the Dr. Leach Drive, you can see the vehicular driveway entrance, you can see some of the parking area, you can see some of what will be the walkway, you can see the existing basketball area. What we haven't incorporated just at this stage of development is the rest of the FOTEN site plan work, like what Sarah was showing earlier, the gateway feature and the donor recognition feature. So I guess what I'll say is this is a preliminary presentation, and depending on what feedback comes out of tonight's meeting, the next round of work that we will do between now and say the end of April will be another sort of iteration of this conceptual design, and at that point in time, we're going to try to capture the whole picture into all of these 3D renderings. But for now, this is as far as we've taken the renderings for the facilities. In this view, you can see the asphalt pump track in the background. You can start to see some of those elevated banked corners and some of the rollers that happen in between. It's also pretty common for us to put white paint on the asphalt pump track, and this just helps people who are riding the park visualize the turns and as they're riding through at speed, and some of the roller features as well. And then this is a great overall view because it shows us the skate park in the foreground and the asphalt pump track in the background, and how each of those would be tying into the basketball area, respectful of the existing vegetation, and also trying to tie into the vehicular circulation and the walkway circulation of the overall site plan. So we've got a bunch of views to share. If you want to jump forward, please, Doug. That's a great view. I like that one of the overall. Here's another elevated view that shows everything really nicely. Sort of the emphasis on the basketball courts in the foreground here, helping us just get a sense of how the proposed pump track and the proposed skate park will integrate with the rest of the existing features on site. So lots of views to share. If you want to jump ahead again, Doug, please. Another view, again, an elevated view. Nobody stands 30 feet tall, but this view would be as if you were 30 feet tall or flying a drone through the site. The elevated views do help us get a good visualization of the overall plan. This would be sort of more or less from the driveway entrance off of Dr. Leach Drive. Showing again the context of everything, and having the vehicles and the people in the rendering really help give it a great sense of scale. This is one of my favorite views that we've created so far. I think it does a great job of illustrating the skate park and how you would enter the skate park off of that walkway. And then sort of what it looks like sort of in the foreground here with the bank ramp on either side, and then the staple flat ground features happening through the middle, the flat ledge, the flat rail, and the manual pad. I do like this view. Jumping forward, Doug, I think we'll just, yeah, another great view of the skate park, just seeing it from a different angle. You can definitely start to see the difference between the bank ramp profiles that don't have steel edging on the top versus the quarter pipe profiles that do have steel edging on the top. All these views are really helpful to help visualize. You can see that there is a lot of elevation change. If we're creating these features both in the skate park and the pump track, sort of at grade and as much as 3 feet elevated. There's a lot of grass berms that need to come off these elevated features, or potentially the integration of some concrete walls with guardrails to create that vertical separation, and then also create the design opportunities for the gateway feature and the donor recognition. So maybe if we want to jump another view there, Doug. This one shows us a couple of the banked corners in the pump track very nicely, and how they would have the grassy berms and sort of the undulation of the terrain as it rises and falls quite a lot. No aspect of these designs is sort of flat or level. There's a lot of undulating terrain and a lot of rising and falling of landscape grades. Yeah. Not sure how many views we have. This is a great view of the skate park that's complementary to that other view we stuck on for a sec. This shows in the foreground here that other feature that exists along the straight line. That's envisioned as an A-frame feature. So if we had more dimension through that long dimension, we might create a like a fun box, where it was like bank to bank with a gap in the middle. Because we are somewhat compromised in the long dimension through here of what you see in the foreground, it is just simply an A-frame bank to A-frame bank, which is still another gap opportunity. And then as it marries to the inside of the skate park, it's basically just a round shape and a bell shape, which will allow you to sort of come in and move away and sort of redirect yourself in a multiple different angles as you come in and come out. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the internal island, but the internal island is basically a 16-inch raised high platform with 45-degree sort of slappy banks on all 4 irregular sides. And one side of it, the long edge marries into the manual pad. And then the opposite corner, we see elevating that another 6 inches to create basically what is a 2-foot high slappy bank. And you can see that very well. It's sort of in the foreground of the middle island of this view. But another great view, you can also see how the pocket works at the far end of the skate park, and the escalation on the through the extension on the quarter pipe profile and that little pocket. You can get some good visualization on that depending on which view you're looking at. This also shows that bank hip profile on the far left side very nicely as well. So we can keep flipping through the views, Doug. I think each shows something different in terms of angle and perspective. Here's a great view of the pump track. As an overall, you can see sort of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 banked corners. Assuming that someone is riding this in a counterclockwise direction, you get sort of 4 right-hand turns and 1 left-hand turn. In the foreground of this view, that's where you get to see the longest straight run that is proposed parallel to Dr. Leach Drive. And that's where you're going to get, because it is the longest straight run, that's where you're going to get the most number of rollers, and also rollers where, again, if you're moving more slowly through the pump track, you would just roll each roller. If you were moving with more speed through this straight section, you could actually, it creates the jump line where you could jump from one roller all the way to the other roller. And this is probably the best view that illustrates that. Yes, any more views to enjoy? Another good view of the pump track with that start deck space. The figures are pretty dark. The black figures are pretty dark against the asphalt background, but you can see sort of in the foreground exactly right there. That would be basically the main standing space and the main starting space of active users waiting to take their turn or take their loop in the pump track. How many more views do we have to share, Doug? Oh,
That was it, Bill.
yeah. So hopefully I did a good job of explaining those features, and hopefully the 3D renderings were enough to fill in the gaps in terms of understanding and visualization of the design. And with that, I'll zip it up until there's any more direct questions coming our way. Thank you.
Okay, just before we finish and head into the questions, I just want to remind people that if you go to the MCPRA website, mcpra.org, you can find the feedback survey that's already up. We also have the PDF of the slideshow, which is up, and encourage you over the long weekend to take some time to look at these renderings, and please give us your feedback. That's what we're looking for at this point. The survey is only going to be posted until April 20th, a week from today. It'll be off at the end of day because we need to keep this process going, especially because we've targeted construction for this year. So I think that's it. Sarah, if you want to.
And I just wanted to remind also that there is an opportunity to post comments on the Engage Ottawa site, the City of Ottawa as well. So
Great, thanks. Yeah, we've already had a couple questions pop up in the chat. The first was about how the bikers would access the pump track, and maybe we need to go back, Doug, to the landscape concept, because as Bill mentioned, we haven't integrated these two sets of visual documents, I guess, together quite yet. We need to work through some of the details. We'll receive feedback here, and we'll begin to integrate the images that we have available for you. But on this plan, oops, yeah, that
Sorry.
you went one too far. On this plan, I think you're gonna have to do the pointing for me, Doug. But you can see that there is no connection between the high points of the pump track and the skate park. We are trying to direct people to one event or the other, rather than transition between the two of them. So we have provided access to the skate park from the the existing asphalt walkway and parking lot, and we can see this little crosswalk that's going to connect to the main entry and into the you're pointing at a different spot, Doug. I'm talking about the skate park. So we've got access just to the skate park there, but then through the plaza that is just to the bottom of the skate park, we have looked at having an accessible route that'll kind of come up and wrap around these existing trees. Incorporates a bench, like a little rest spot or a spot where you could watch people in the pump track, and it makes its way up to the staging area of the pump track, where we're envisioning informal seating in the form of armor stone, but also an accessible bench so that this area is comfortable for everybody. And then there is also a connection out to Beaverwood Road. That route may not be an accessible route. It will be sort of considered too steep at about 6%, but still easy for a bike, like no problem there. So that's how you access the pump track to get to the staging areas, is via one of these two paths. We'll have to work out the details of these through detailed design, exactly the positioning of it and the grading for these paths. But conceptually, this is how we see accessing that area in the pump track on your bike.
And Mike had clarified as well in the chat, in case no one's looking at the chat right now. There is no lighting proposed for either of these new facilities. There's, I think, an old light pole got picked up in the renders, and that's from the existing skate park and the old tennis court when it was in this location many years ago.
So if you'd like, you can post your questions in the chat, or just raise your hand, and there's a little thing up at the top that'll allow. Okay, if I can see you. We've got Mark raising his hand physically, but there's also a little react that'll allow you to raise your hand too. But maybe Mark, you can go ahead.
Okay, just first want to say, oh, my 2-year-old. First want to say thank you very much to New Line for coming in to design this wonderful facility. And thanks to everybody else that's contributed. I'm very, very pleased with the latest 3D drawings and everything. It's very, very impressive, to say the least. I'm very happy with what I see. As far as the design of the skateboard park, very happy with what I see on the latest design of the pump track. And I noticed the drawings show the cycle course not counterclockwise, as was originally pointed out. It's very, very common, correct, for pump tracks to be built in a counterclockwise way. But just like most people write with their right hand, it's much more natural for a cyclist to turn right than it is left. So it is safer if it is clockwise. And the drawings seem to indicate that it would be clockwise. So, and also the fall line of that property, if you've been on site, would make it easier to make it all the way back to the start again if it was going clockwise. That's my first point. Pump track clockwise, please. Thank you. Next point is there's some plantings on, I think what was referred to as J, which is the southmost end of the skateboard park. We've pointed out many times that wood chips and small plantings have no place near a skateboard park, and the material ends up on the skateboard park almost every time. In fact, if that could just be another manual pad as opposed to a, yeah, there you go, Jay. That box there, if that could be another manual pad as opposed to a planting, that would be excellent. It would be less dangerous for the skateboarders, not having to deal with rocks or dirt or wood chips, and it would provide another expansion of the skateboard park without increasing the cost of the skateboard park dramatically. Just 1 minute, please, Eli. The next thing that I want to point out was the way New Line has integrated the banks to the sides of the pump track and to the sides of the skateboard park is much, much safer than Fotan's proposed railings. Railings and walls around skateboard parks are a danger. It's an opportunity for somebody to slam against something hard as opposed to falling forward slowly onto the grass and not coming to a hard stop on a metal object. And it does decrease the opportunity for what we call in our sport is flyaways. So like K and H and M, they're all areas where if you could jump out onto the landing pad, especially with scooter riders, they love flyaways. So they have the opportunity to do a trick, or they like to do tail whips and bar spins. I'm not a scooter kid, but if there's a steel or aluminum fence right there, that would be it would infringe on the creativity the rider would have to do the sport. I'm not saying they shouldn't have a sponsor sign somewhere or signage for the skateboard park, but it shouldn't be close to the skateboard park. It should be somewhere, against the building of the arena or somewhere closer to the parking area. It shouldn't be within striking distance for somebody doing the sports. Yeah, soft banks are good. Railings are bad. Yes, as mentioned on going back to the pump track, yes, pump tracks should have the opportunity to catch air, to hit jumps, but also should be rollable. I'm one of the board members for Ottawa Mountain Bike Association, and I'm in charge of the Carlington Bike Park, the maintenance of Carlington Bike Park, and we have different features that are more difficult and more exciting for some riders, and other features that are more easy for other riders. It's very dangerous in terms of the longevity of the facility if there isn't an opportunity for people to increase their skill and challenge themselves. So it's nice to hear that the pump track is going to be designed with some features that if somebody has the skill and the speed, will be able to catch air. Okay, I think you've heard me talk enough.
Thanks very much, Mark. We'll take those comments into consideration, and Bill and I will definitely talk about railings versus a rolling transition of slope. Perhaps if the space is wider, we can accommodate both. But Bill's really the expert on the skate park components, so I'll rely on him, to help guide the design of those features. I'm just looking back to the chat, and there is another question about the type of seating and gathering area proposed for parents watching kids. And I'm an aunt, and I've spent countless hours at skate parks watching my nephew skate. So yes, certainly having places to sit was important to me. In this view, they're very light, and they don't contrast really enough against the asphalt color gray that we've used. But we do have several benches proposed around the skate park and the pump track. So maybe starting at the parking lot, Doug. There's that existing post and rail barrier, and we've put 2 benches facing the skate park. We were also considering, and it hasn't been shown on this design, but wondering whether or not we could close the planted area that Mark pointed out was labeled as J, and have a seat wall that would face, back towards those benches. Then to the bottom of the skate park, we are considering having those mounted benches on a wall at the end of the skate park, which would allow you to sit and face towards the basketball courts and the rink. We also are showing 2 freestanding benches opposite that wall that face back towards the skate park. We're showing a bench as you move along the path towards the pump track. We're showing a bench at sort of a viewpoint pretty close to the pump track where you'd be able to watch people on the pump track. And then when you make your way up to the staging area, there's the informal seating we're proposing of armor stone, but also an actual bench up in that location. And then we have one more bench, but perhaps it's two. It sort of will depend on the space with the trees and where the pump track actually ends up. But yeah, just above the pump track, close to Dr. Leach Drive. And that bench would not be accessible because it would not have a paved route to it. But where you can kind of see that light gray from Dr. Leach Drive, that's actually a culvert crossing of the existing ditch, and it's quite flat through there. So we envision that most a lot of people will be able to get across there and across the grass. It's quite flat, and make their way to a bench and sort of an informal seating area in that location too. So there is quite a bit of quite a few new benches and seating areas suggested here, in addition to the ones that were already installed. There's 4 um, associated with the new basketball courts and the rink. And I see a question about the pump track being added to the concept. Would you or Mike maybe like to reply to that question? I see you did mention this in the chat, but maybe you'd like to speak to it also.
Yeah. Certainly, people may wonder, where did that come from? Because we didn't initially start out with that intent, but it was certainly through the consultations and some visitations to other sites like Perth and Carleton Place, where the pump track has been added, and it's extremely popular. Especially by young girls, tend to go toward it, possibly more than in larger numbers than to the skate park area. So we felt if there was the possibility, we should look at it during this opportunity. And I think Bill's done an incredible job of trying to meet both those needs in our area.
Thanks, Anne. Do we have any more comments or any more questions? Oh, Terry Lynn's got her hand raised.
I used my hand.
It worked.
No, I just wanted to make a comment on the signage and the metal sculptures, and I think it's super fun. And yeah, like those like, I know Mark was saying they're not the greatest up there, and that is totally out of my area of expertise, but I think that is so cute and colorful, and it brings in everything what that park is supposed to be about, with the basketball and the skateboarders and the bikes and the kids and having fun. And so I just wanted to applaud you for that idea. I think it looks great, and the back side to look over at the basketball net, I thought it was really great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think if that's it, do we have any other questions or comments? If not, I just want to remind folks to make sure you go on the website, mcpra.org, and the feedback survey is right there. We want to hear your comments and take the time, if not tonight, over the long weekend, and provide us that input and share your thoughts. I think that's all we have. I'm grateful to everyone who took the time tonight. I realize on the close to a long weekend and everybody's busy and got 100 things to do, but this is really appreciated. Thank you and good night.
Yes, thanks everybody.
Good night. Whoops, good night.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. It was a
Absolutely
great
wonderful.
meeting. Thank you. It's wonderful. Just wonderful.
Do you want to take a couple of minutes
I think I'll,
to
what do
do?
we do here? End the meeting, and if you'd like to chat, Anne, we can come back in.
Okay. Do
Okay.
you want to do that or call it a night?
I have time if you'd like to. Sure.
Okay. All right. I'll hang up and then get the link again.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.